Norway. This Scandinavian nation fought one of the shortest campaigns of World War II, armed with weapons from the previous century. The Norwegian army fielded the Krag Jørgensen M 1894 as its standard service rifle chambered in 6.5 by 55 millimeters Swedish. Designed by Ole Krag and Erik Jørgensen in the late 1880s, this bolt-action rifle featured one of the most mechanically unusual magazines ever fitted to a military weapon. Instead of a conventional box magazine loaded by stripper clips, the Krag used a hinged side-loading gate on the right side of the receiver, where cartridges were dropped in individually and pushed around an internal track by a spring follower. The system allowed soldiers to top off the magazine without opening the bolt, a genuine advantage in freezing Arctic conditions, but painfully slow compared to the 5-round charger systems used by Mauser pattern rifles across Europe. Over 215,000 Krag Jørgensen rifles and carbines were manufactured at the Kongsberg Arms Factory between 1894 and 1922, with an additional 33,500 produced by Steyr in Austria. The final variant was the M1930 sniper rifle, with only 466 produced before the invasion, though the exceptionally flat-shooting 6.5mm cartridge made the Krag an excellent long-range precision platform, despite its slow reload. Norwegian forces possessed virtually no submachine guns and relied on aging Madsen and Colt machine guns for automatic fire support. When Germany invaded in April 1940, Norwegian infantry armed with single-loading Krags faced Wehrmacht troops carrying Karabiner 98K rifles, MP-40 submachine guns, and MG-34 machine guns. The 62-day campaign ended with occupation, and Kongsberg was forced to continue producing Krag Jørgensen rifles for German garrison forces. Greece. This Mediterranean nation humiliated Mussolini's Italy and held off the German Wehrmacht with a blend of high-quality craftsmanship and chronic equipment shortages. The Greek Army's standard service rifle was the Mannlicher Schönauer M 1903, chambered in 6.5 by 54 millimeters. Designed by Ferdinand Mannlicher and Otto Schönauer in the late 1890s, this bolt-action rifle set itself apart through its innovative rotating spool magazine, where 5 cartridges sat on a spinning spindle, feeding with exceptional smoothness and virtually eliminating jams. The rifle weighed approximately 8.25 pounds with sights graduated to 2,000 meters. Greece issued 4 major contracts totaling roughly 310,000 rifles and carbines between 1903 and 1930, manufactured by Steyr in Austria and Breda in Italy. The Mannlicher Schönauer earned legendary status for its butter-smooth bolt action, but the 6.5mm cartridge delivered marginal terminal performance compared to the 7.92mm Mauser rounds used by both Italian and German opponents. Squad automatic fire relied on limited Hotchkiss and Saint-Étienne machine guns, supplemented by captured Italian Breda, M30 light machine guns, and Beretta submachine guns taken during the Albanian campaign of 1940 through 41. Greece attempted domestic production of the EPK submachine gun, but only 10 to 15 prototypes were completed before the German invasion halted all development. The fundamental problem was not rifle quality, but everything surrounding it. Greek infantry lacked adequate modern light machine guns, mortars, and anti-tank weapons. And when Germany intervened in April 1941, soldiers who had routed Italian divisions were overwhelmed by Luftwaffe air superiority and panzer formations their infantry weapons could not counter. Yugoslavia. This Balkan kingdom's infantry loadout is a story of 2 entirely different wars fought by the same nation. The Royal Yugoslav Army entered 1941, equipped with the M24 Mauser as its standard service rifle chambered in 7.92 by 57 millimeters. This Czechoslovakian-manufactured short rifle was a compact Mauser 98 derivative, handier in dense Balkan terrain than the full-length Karabiner 98K. Yugoslavia acquired approximately 300,000 M24 rifles with additional production at the Zastava factory in Kragujevac. Squad automatic support came from the Czechoslovakian ZB VZ-26 light machine gun, the same design that fathered the British Bren, feeding from 20-round box magazines at approximately 500 rounds per minute. The Royal Army collapsed in 11 days following the April 1941 invasion, but the weapons survived in partisan hands. From this point forward, the Yugoslav loadout became whatever Tito's partisans could capture, steal, or receive from Allied supply drops. By 1943, partisan units were fielding captured German MP-40 submachine guns, MG-34 and MG-42 machine guns, Italian Carcano rifles, British Sten guns, and Soviet PPS H-41 submachine guns. This created an almost impossible logistical situation with 5 or 6 incompatible ammunition types in a single brigade. By 1944, The National Liberation Army had grown into over 800,000 fighters, the most effective resistance movement in occupied Europe, armed with a patchwork arsenal that functioned through sheer determination. Czechoslovakia. This Central European nation represents the greatest what-if in infantry loadout history. Before the Munich Agreement dismembered the country in 1938, Czechoslovakia fielded one of the most technologically advanced infantry forces on the continent. The standard service rifle was the Vaz-24 chambered in 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser, manufactured at the Zbrojovka Brno factory, with machining tolerances and steel quality that exceeded the German Karabiner 98K. Over 790,000 were produced for domestic and export contracts. Where Czechoslovakia truly outpaced every European army was in automatic weapons. The ZBVZ-26 light machine gun provided squad-level firepower that directly influenced the British Bren gun design. The weapon was so effective that after the occupation, Germany redesignated it the MG-26T and issued it extensively to Waffen-SS units who initially lacked access to standard Wehrmacht supply channels. Over 45,000 were purchased by the Czechoslovak army, with more than 120,000 produced for export to 24 countries. The Czechs also pioneered semi-automatic rifle development with the ZH-29, designed by Emanuel Holek in the late 1920s. This gas-operated rifle used a tilting bolt locking system remarkably similar to what would later appear in the Sturmgewehr 44. Approximately 500 to 600 were manufactured primarily for export to China, but the design represented a technological leap most armies would not achieve for another decade. The VZ-24 rifles, ZB machine guns, and an extensive border fortification network meant Czechoslovakia was prepared for a modern war that never came. When Germany absorbed the country without firing a shot, the entire arsenal was seized, and Czech factories spent the rest of the war producing weapons for the very army they had been designed to fight against. India. The largest volunteer army in human history fought across 3 continents, blending British doctrine with local manufacturing capability. The Indian Army's standard service rifle was the SMLE Mark III chambered in .303 British, the same 10-round magazine-fed Lee Enfield that armed the entire Commonwealth. What distinguished Indian infantry from their British counterparts was squad automatic fire support. The Indian Army adopted the Vickers-Berthier Mark III light machine gun in 1933 rather than waiting for the Bren gun. Manufactured at the Ishapur Rifle Factory, the Vickers-Berthier fired .303 British from a 30-round top-mounted box magazine at approximately 500 rounds per minute. The weapon weighed 24 pounds and proved simpler to manufacture than the Bren, though slightly heavier with a lower rate of fire and less reliable in dusty or muddy conditions. From 1942 onward, Ishapur transitioned to Bren gun production to standardized logistics, but the Vickers-Berthier continued serving with reserve units into the 1980s. Indian forces also received Thompson and Sten submachine guns for close-quarters fighting, particularly in the jungles of Burma, where engagements occurred at distances under 50 yards. Over 2.5 million volunteers served from North Africa to Southeast Asia, turning Ishapur into one of the largest small arms factories in the British Empire. South Africa. This Commonwealth nation provided battle-hardened infantry that became the backbone of several critical North African victories. South African forces carried a ruggedized version of the standard British infantry kit optimized for desert warfare. The SMLE No. 1 Mark III Asterisk served as the primary service rifle chambered in .303 British. Where South African infantry diverged from standard Commonwealth doctrine was in the unusually high proportion of submachine guns distributed at the squad level. The Thompson M 1928A1 saw widespread issue, providing devastating close-quarters firepower with its .45 ACP cartridge. This emphasis on submachine gun density reflected North African combat realities where trench raids and fortification assaults against Afrika Korps positions were routine. Squad automatic fire came from the Bren gun with 30-round curved magazines, supplemented by Vickers medium machine guns for sustained defensive fire. South African infantry were also distinguished by specialized desert equipment. Leather load-bearing gear replaced standard British cotton webbing, which deteriorated rapidly in extreme heat and abrasive sand. Distinctive pith sun helmets were used for behind-the-lines duties, though frontline troops increasingly adopted the standard Mark II Brodie steel helmet as the campaign progressed. The South African loadout represented British infantry equipment elevated by practical desert adaptations and an aggressive close-quarters orientation. New Zealand. These Commonwealth soldiers earned a reputation as shock troops who compensated for limited resources with relentless improvisation. New Zealand infantry carried the standard British SMLE No. 1, Mark III Star, and later the Lee Enfield No. 4, Mark I chambered in .303 British, with Bren guns providing squad automatic fire. The loadout appeared identical to any British infantry section on paper. But New Zealand forces distinguished themselves through extra grenades, additional submachine gun allocation, and aggressive close-quarters kits reflecting their deployment as assault troops in North Africa and Italy. The most remarkable piece of New Zealand wartime innovation was the Charlton automatic rifle. When Japanese expansion threatened the Pacific in 1941 and Bren gun supplies were critically short, engineer Philip Charlton designed a fully automatic conversion of obsolete Lee Metford and Lee Enfield rifles. The system was an entirely external bolt-on kit that attached a gas tube connecting the barrel to the bolt, cycling the action at approximately 600 rounds per minute without any permanent modification to the original rifle. The Charlton accepted standard 10-round Lee Enfield magazines and modified 30-round Bren magazines, with a selector switch offering safe, semi-automatic, and fully automatic modes. A finned barrel and bipod were fitted to support sustained fire. Approximately 1,500 were manufactured at Charlton Motor Workshops in Hastings between 1942 and 43 for the Home Guard. Australia began producing a variant through the Electrolux company, though full production never materialized before the Japanese threat receded. Nearly all Charlton rifles were destroyed in an accidental fire at the Palmerston North Ordnance Depot on the 31st of December, 1944, making survivors among the rarest automatic weapons of the war. Brazil, the only South American ground combat force to fight in the European theater, arrived in Italy as a completely modernized American-equipped army. The Brazilian Expeditionary Force, known as the FEB, traded its entire outdated pre-war arsenal for current production United States infantry weapons before entering combat in 1944. Brazilian troops initially trained with Springfield M1903 bolt-action rifles before receiving the M1 Garand upon arrival in Italy. The M1 Garand became the standard service rifle chambered in .30-06 Springfield, giving every Brazilian rifleman semi-automatic firepower that most Axis and many Allied forces still lacked. The 8-round in-block clip-fed gas-operated action delivered aimed fire out to ranges exceeding 500 yards. Squad automatic fire came from the M1918A, 2 Browning automatic rifle firing .30-06 from 20-round box magazines at 300 or 600 rounds per minute. The M1919 4 Browning provided company-level sustained fire with belt-fed .30-06 ammunition. Brazilian soldiers also received M1 carbines, M1911A1 pistols in .45A CP, and M3 grease gun submachine guns. The FEB's 25,000 combat troops wore the famous Smoking Snakes shoulder patch, a defiant response to the pre-war Brazilian, saying that a snake would sooner smoke a pipe than Brazil would send troops to war. They fought through the Italian Gothic line from September 1944 through May 1945. Complete transition to American equipment meant Brazilian logistics ran through United States supply channels with zero ammunition compatibility issues. By war's end, the FEB had captured over 20,000 Axis prisoners, proving that a South American force could perform on equal footing with any major power's frontline divisions. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and drop a comment. See you on the next one.